Hi, kitty cats. The past couple of months, I think, has left us all feeling a bit bruised. So today I want to have a bit of fun. I am opening the floor to any and all questions. That have to be at least respectful, and I will do my best to answer everything as honestly as possible. So this is about gender, sex, social transition, medical transition, anything you got. Also, to get us started, I do have some interesting viewer comments. I want to start off with those to respond to, and then if I have some time, I actually have some thoughts after I watched The Matrix last night for the first time in like 20 years. Depending upon participation, of course, I want to get in some Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood. I think the Coven is in for a major shakeup in leadership, so I'd love to get to that. All right, let me do my opening plugs, my live stream opening plugs. And apparently I should clear my throat too. I am Dr. Amethysta Herrick. I am both an author and a podcaster. I discuss identity and gender from a scientific standpoint, and you can check this link right there for more information about me and the work that I do. If you're just listening, that website is purplepawclan.com, where you will be able to follow me on all of my social networks, and you can also read all the articles that I write and view the podcasts that I record. So if you like this content, and I have no doubt you will, please consider subscribing at right there, purplepawclan.com. You can get a subscription for as low as $5 a month. I also publish articles and podcasts by other contributors. So if you are interested in contributing your original work about identity and gender, then I encourage you to email me through the contact page. Where? Well, right down there. Go to that same website, purplepawclan.com. And you can email me and it'll be a grand old time. Whatever that's supposed to mean. All right, let me say hello to people. I see Mrs. Miroku joined. That's fun. I kind of like that. I see, so I don't know Joe, but Joe, thank you so much. Joe says that they see me, support me, and say hi. So hi, Joe. Also seeing Margie, so great to see you. Genevieve, always good to see you as well. Oh, look, my posts. And then Brenda as well. So good to see all of you already. I don't, Wheat Bix, that's like a breakfast cereal? Is that what that is? All right, so to get us started, so I am willing to, so this is an Ask Me Anything, an AMA. I am willing to answer any question that you may have about gender and gender transition. I am actually fully transitioned, I guess is the word that's used there. I have finished all of the social transition bits. I have finished all of the medical transition bits, including, whatever surgeries I intended to get. So if you have questions, pop them right down there in the comments, and I would love to have a conversation. I do want to say I want this to be a conversation. I got some jokes, with fewer comments, but by all means, by any means, I suppose, it's really just comments, so it's not that many means. But interact with me because I want to interact with you. So I've got a comment here from Brenda. I'm not really sure that this. My only question is how you managed to suck up all the awesomeness in the world for yourself. I thank you so much, Brenda. I'm not sure I can answer that because when it happens, we'll get there. I'll answer it, but oh shoot, I already forgot to put comments up. There we go. Whew. All right, let me do some viewer comments. Just so as like an introduction to this, as a transgender woman who puts herself out there, believe it or not, I can get some kind of ugly comments, that come to me on whatever streaming platforms I'm on. So I like to read those and respond to them because oftentimes, it's like something that, like I'm not really going to respond to this person. I just end up reporting them. So anyway, let me get to those. Let me share screen. Oh, I'm not even really sure where this is. Is that it? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, so I found the window. This is good already. So let me switch to this because I have I have some funny ones. Here we go. So, Bama. It's probably Bama. I'm willing to bet it's like Bama for Alabama, which suddenly explains these suddenly explains these comments. Anyway, so Bama4279 says only you're gay. Okay. I remember when this was an insult. You know, I truly do. I remember when this was an insult. Last time that happened, I think, was about like junior high school. So when none of us knew what that meant, right? When we were just like, I don't know, gay? I think that's an insult, right? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you, Bama, what this means, you know. Since we're back in the 1980s in junior high school, we're not going to be able to sit next to each other at lunch anymore. Yeah, I'm really sorry. I mean, we could have joined the chess club. We could have joined the physics club. We could have maybe worked on the school newspaper, taken pictures, you know, of people wearing like members only jackets and penny loafers and, you know, like neon green mesh bodysuits. We could have taken pictures of those, but no. No, you had to insult me. So at this point, yeah, you're going to have to go off on your own. I mean, maybe we can revisit this when you get your braces off or something. I don't know. Anyway, you're gay. So Margie says that Bam is complimenting me, right? The best thing about being transgender, no matter whom I have sex with, it's gay somehow. Yeah, there you go. That's a great point. Oh gosh, that never struck me. That's a really good point. All right, so that's one. Just one. Look at this, because now we have. Bama gives me another one on the same. It's on the same. So here you can see. Sorry, I didn't show on the same video. Guys leaves another one. Okay. I'm probably a member of Antifa. Oh boy. I know this is also meant to be an insult. Like I get it. If you don't know, if you're not aware, the Antifa is a what's the word for that? A portmanteau of anti-fascism. And just recently, I think in the last maybe last week, I don't know, Trump wrote an executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. Happens to be anti-fascism. So Bama. I'm going to be a little bit Kevin Meany here for a moment. So Kevin, I mean, this is a great question, Margie. How can I be a member of an organization with no formalized structure or leadership? Great point. It's a good question. In my best feeling of like my best Kevin Meany sort of you know, methodology here, like I think this person is saying, like this person's like, hey, what's wrong with you? You don't like militaristic autocrats. You think individual rights are a good thing? What's wrong with you? Your father didn't think that way. That's the way I see it. Really? You don't think militaristic autocrats are bad? You don't think individual rights would be a bad thing? Anyway, so here we go. This is actually, I'm going to report this person, right? Because it's twice in one video. I mean, you almost want to say, for what it's worth, you almost want to say like, wow, well done. You know, you almost never see this level of sort of antisocial ignorance. I mean, outside of like our elected officials, right? So, gonna go ahead and give you hateful or abusive content. So there you go. Bye. And on two. So here we'll do the same here. I think this one's only bullying. I'll just call this one bullying. This is only really bullying. So anyway. 2 on 1. That's impressive. So Bam, I thank you for your content, for giving me some content to talk about. All right, let me see. Here's my next one. This is actually a pretty good one. And I don't mean this, I don't mean to say it's a pretty good one. So here we go. Let me read this. So Mimi before you. It's true, I've never been Mimi. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, it's at least truth in advertising, right? Mimi before you says, wow, look at this. I'm being recommended my own video. There you go. Anyway, Mimi says, I mourn that my girly granddaughter, 7, will transition as the contagion continues to be normalized. Anorexia nervosa could have killed me if my family hadn't intervened. Also never talks about how Hamas would respond. This is on a relatively recent, so a month ago. Transgender Joy. I actually went and looked at the script on that. In no way do I talk about Israel or Hamas. I don't like. I'm not even sure what the hell that means. So that part of it, I'll go okay. Not sure where you're going with that, Mimi, but here's kind of the point. Your grandchild's identity. Your grandchild's identity has somehow become about you. You're going to mourn. You're going to hurt. Your identity, your comfort is going to be threatened. And you have no concern for your grandson's, okay? Grandson's identity. I would kind of think, Mimi, that you would understand, as anorexia typically includes some smattering of gender dysphoria within it, having to conform to social norms that you don't want to, but no. No, you're making this about politics. You're making this about you. And then you're going to blame me. You're going to blame me for what your grandson is doing with his own identity. I hope, Mimi, you learn that not all people are going to live their lives for you. All right? Some of us are going to choose happiness over your comfort. I suggest you get used to that now because your life's going to be a lot easier if you allow people to be who they are as opposed to trying to politicize every single thing. The contagion. Look at this. The contagion. Somehow I'm the problem. Somehow her grandson is the problem. You're horrible. Sorry, Mimi, but you're horrible. I think that is hateful, and I hope your grandson goes no contact with you at some point. I got kind of spicy on that one. Woo! Okay, so Angela and Brenda, I'm seeing some questions. Give me a sec. I have one more left here. This is super fast too, because wow, I'm not really sure where this comes from. Here we go. This one's pretty quick. Transjoy. What do we got? This is on a. Oh, this is my most recent one of my more recent Transgender Joy videos here. Shiver me timbers. Shiver me timbers. Says only Transjoy equals boner. I'm actually going to take that as I'm going to be sort of flattered by that. I sincerely think what this means. The way I'm interpreting this person, Shiver Me Timbers, has said they watch, I'll say they, watches my Transgender Joy videos, and there it is. So thank you. I truly appreciate it. I'm going to like and I'm going to heart this, and I'm going to like it. Because thank you. That really makes me feel better. I mean, at my age, anytime somebody can say that, I feel pretty good about that. Particularly since I'm pretty dang confident that's not the spirit in which this has been presented. So I'm just going to throw that much out there. All right, those are all the viewer comments I had. I thought those were some interesting ones, and now I can go back. Now I can go back to whatever else I had going on. Also, I hope that I'm closing all the windows there. Sorry. I hope that these are interesting to you. I hope I've never wanted to like call somebody out, but then sometimes we do. I get these comments, and I'm just like, why would you bother writing that somewhere? Like, why would you do that? Oh, by the way, hi, Ariandria. Ariandria, good to see you. So I don't entirely know why people would write some of these comments, but if you do, it's in a public spot. I mean, last week I did something about the First Amendment, and it's like, if you're putting this in my comments, then you've made it public domain. So I'm gonna give that I'm gonna get some comment out of it. Let's see. All right, let me hit some comments here because these are some great questions. Angela brings up the question, says, "Did I get picked on at school, and was I shy because I couldn't be my true self?" The quick answer is yes. I was pretty much picked on, I'd pretty much say I was picked on until I went to college. So that's no good. When I brought up Bama earlier, in part I brought that up because I did get that insult. I did get, oh, well, you must be gay. And I'm like, actually, I like both. I'm thinking to myself, no, I like both. Is it bad to like both? Is it bad to be gay? And I really started questioning what are you trying to say to me? So yes, certainly in elementary school and particularly in junior high school, I got picked on a lot. And it was always pretty awful. There are still, how about if I just say this? There was also, some sexual abuse that occurred, with people in junior high. And I don't like to make these define me. Like, I don't want these to define me. And at the same time, I think it is important, Angela, that we bring these out. So thank you for that question. I definitely was picked on at school, and I was super duper shy. When I was younger, I wanted to express myself in certain ways. And, my parents at the very least were like, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is not the way people like you, which is to say, they were thinking I was a little boy. People like you are supposed to act. So yes, I was very shy because the whole time I thought that I was being told I was wrong for everything that I did, every single thing that I did. So I think that, I'm gonna go out on a limb because Angela, I suspect that you face this as well. I mean, this is an extremely common transgender experience, at least with all the people that I've spoken to. It seems pretty common that people will. Oh, hey, Ava. Ava just joined. Oh my gosh, and so did Matt. Hey, Matt. Thank you so much for the gifts, Matt. You're so kind. I think it's a very common transgender experience. It's a very common queer experience, all told, I think, to be said, to be given feedback that you in general are wrong. And that does make us shy. It makes us very insecure. Makes us very insecure. We can't be our own selves, and that sucks. So, Angela, hopefully that was a good answer, or a complete enough answer. Yeah, quickly, yes. All yes to it all. That's a bummer. So here we go. Brenda's got a great question. This is a great question because I did a live stream, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago now, that was the basis. Well, hang on, let me read the question, I suppose. That's probably good. Brenda says, I have a serious question. I have serious dysphoria with my voice, but I'm afraid that I'll sound stupid as I try to feminize it. Any advice on how to handle this? So I did do something a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, about voice, of gender affirming voice in particular, that ended up as the framework, I'll put it, for a paper that was submitted to the American Journal of Speech Language Pathology, I believe it's called. And it was submitted just last week, October 1st, I think. I didn't write that on my own. There was somebody who was invited, a friend of mine who was invited to submit a paper from a client perspective. And so Kevin reached out to me and said, yeah, do you want to collaborate on this paper? So the point I'm going to go toward here is that I was afraid of the same thing. When there are three major problems that I think we face, that specifically gender affirming voice clients face, and it all comes down to our perception of gender. We tend to get shamed, and actually this is a great question to come after Angela's. We tend to get shamed for being who we are. And so as we try to express ourselves as who we are more and more, that shame continues to come back. And this is obviously a large component of our chronic gender dysphoria. So, but that shame actually like affects the way that we even hear things. Like we struggle even to hear our own voices. We struggle to hear components of other voices. And this, it's real. I mean, I've had many other people go, yes, I struggle with that because I don't want to hear components of what makes a voice feminine or what makes a voice masculine. And if we struggle with that, the next part, which is actually trying to make these sounds, pulls it, it makes the dysphoria even worse, makes the shame even worse. I got a lisp. I should go to a speech language pathologist. And then once we get to the last one, the big point here is that usually SLPs, speech language pathologists, if you work with one, unless you work with somebody who is not necessarily speech language pathologist, but certainly knows a lot about voice. Like for instance, Jasmine Vine, my friend is really good with voice as well. Specifically Mickey Mouse and Goofy. If you work with an SLP though, they're generally expecting somebody as they address whatever issue the SLP is helping with, usually that makes other people more comfortable to be around them. Because like if you have, let's just say a lisp, that's a fairly straightforward one. My sister, when she was younger, had a lisp. And so I know she worked with an SLP or somebody. And as that cleared up, other people were more comfortable communicating with her. I think it's almost exactly the opposite when it comes to gender affirming voice, because you're asking people to recognize you in a different way. You're asking people to change their behavior on how they react to you. And it's really, really difficult. I will not kid you. The worst part for me, because I have a decent ear, I have been singing since I was, pretty young. So I didn't have trouble hearing the components of voice. I didn't have trouble mimicking. I don't know if I want to say mimicking, but making those components of voice. Where I really struggled was bringing it into real life, especially with the people that I knew. That's really hard. So, I mean, the advice that I have, I know that it can be done. I know that you can do it. And I will say you need to be super duper. You need to be honest with whomever you work. If it's going to be an SLP, you have to be really, you have to tell them if you don't hear the components of the voice. You need to tell them if you feel something like shame, because there's ways around it. I think most of it is internal, but I think a lot of it is if you have an SLP who can be very affirming and very kind, I think you can do it. Brenda, I don't know if that was great advice, but I think the biggest point I would make is find somebody who has trained to do this. Find somebody who's trained to do it. So here's a good question. So Margie asks, am I neurospicy? I got to tell you, I've never been diagnosed. I've never taken any tests. And I will say this. I made a new friend recently whose name is Krista. And if you're watching, hi. Anyway, Krista, one of the big things, I met a bunch of people. Here's the point. I met a bunch of people and probably 5 people said, oh my gosh, you met Krista. And I'm like, why should I? And then I did. We went and got coffee a couple of weeks ago. And immediately I was just like, oh my gosh, this person is it was everything that I would think. This person is just same thing. And a lot of what she says, she's like, listen, I was late diagnosed autistic. And there were a lot of things she said. I was like, oh, I totally get that. Oh, I totally get that. Totally get that. Not to keep plugging my own work, although I may as well as my live stream. I wrote an article. I'm not even sure when this was. It might have been in 2024 about a possible overlap between between gender diverse people, and in particular neurodiverse people. Really, the way that this, because I even got quoted in the Daily Mail. So, couldn't believe it. Although the irony here is that I was like the very first expert referred to, and then the rest of the article says, "Yeah, we totally disagree with that." So it's like, "Oh, I'm a foil. That's good. Glad to be a foil on the Daily Mail." So anyway, so that's why I wrote like sort of a rebuttal, because I don't think that neurodiversity and gender dysphoria necessarily overlap. I think that what we tend to see is neurodiverse people struggle either to understand or even to recognize social norms. I mean, and this is one of the big like characteristics, right? I think they struggle to recognize or to understand social norms, and people with gender dysphoria are doing the same. You know, I don't think it's necessarily the same. I don't think it's the same response, but I think they're two similar foundations. So, you know, am I neurospicy? Could be. My good friend now, she said I was her bestie when I saw her, Friday. I get along with her really well, and she's autistic, so maybe. But at the same time, I do believe that there is a relationship between the responses that lead both to gender dysphoria and to neurodiversity. So I don't think that really answered your question, but that's fine. I do like this. Seriously, you don't have to be like everyone else. You don't have to fit into the norms. You do not have to conform. I don't. Was Marina? Was that the singer you were telling me about, Margie? Some time back. You know, I'm gonna tell you, Brenda. Yeah, it's kind of ick. Chaser. So Brenda says chaser misogyny equals euphoria. Yeah. It's fun. It's funny when and like at some point I was riding on a little scooter. I've told this story a bunch of times, but somebody drove past me and said, "Hey, sugar tits," and I was like, "Wow, like really? You kiss your mother with that mouth?" And then inside I was going, right? So, yes, euphoria, so true. So Margie mentions, Salt Lake City in the 1970s. Everybody was harassed and bullied. Still are, yes. Angela brings up the same thing, that she was harassed and bullied. So, the funny thing is, like I mentioned, I think that particular, like that first viewer comment, I think it really is. People go, "Well, I don't understand it, so it must be like a good insult." I maybe in mathematics circles or something, they're going, "Yeah, can you believe Jim willing to bet that he thinks that you can have, but well, there you go." I was hoping it would be a good joke, but I couldn't even get it out. Let me try again. Can you believe Jim? I bet you he thinks that solving oh, forget it. I was going to go with partial differential equations, less equations than variables. Oh well. If you like math, you probably heard that and went, "Oh, that's funny." Sorry, everybody. I'll try again. Do agree here. Everybody is beautiful and valid. I think everybody. Okay. Angela, I think, has a fascinating story. Someday I really want to talk to you, by the way. So Brenda says she had the problem when, after 32 years of transitioning, she changed her voice. Oh, that's right. We talked about this on the when I did that one live stream about voice. It does sound strange, and I think the worst part is exactly when you sound strange to other people, or you feel you sound strange to other people. And actually, I want to follow this up. I was about to say follow you. I don't know. Jasmine gave me these two terms. So Jasmine Vine gave me these two terms. And I think it's a phenomenal way to think about this. We have many voices that we can do. One of them is our default voice. The default voice comes from various things. Configuration of your vocal tract, your facility at moving your muscles and hearing the way that you sound. But it also comes from social norms. It also comes from the way that you've been treated. It's come from how you have learned to survive in your social environment. And that's where we don't want to overlook the challenges that can come, because that's huge. In my opinion, learning to hear the things, that's not so bad. Learning to develop the muscle memory, learning how to do the tricks until you feel what it feels like to raise your larynx or do whatever. Those are relatively simple things. So changing your default voice is not that bad. So anyway, those are the two things. So you have a default voice that is based in not just your facility at using your voice, but also your social environment. And then you have your chosen voice. Jasmine made an exceptional point that it's not like you have a fake voice. You just have a default voice and then the voice you choose. In my case, I'm choosing a voice that's different from my default. And I think that's a really healthy way to look at it, because chosen is voluntary, right? And our behavior is voluntary. Default voice is behavior, chosen voice is behavior. All you've done is chosen different behavior. And I'm bringing all this up to say, because Angela says it sounded strange to start with, agreed. It does sound strange, but you're choosing to do that. And sooner or later, behavior becomes natural, becomes normal. I don't know that I want to use the word normal, but it does become normal to you. There was an interesting thing. I got a new phone. I don't even know. It was like a couple of years ago now. I mean, at least a year ago. I don't remember when I got this phone. But I'm doing some setup on it, right? I'm like, I'm looking around. Anyway, I go into because I'm thinking, do I have to re-record my voicemail thing? Right? Because I'm like, I don't even know. Apparently, me and technology. I thought I was pretty good with technology. But so a couple of years ago, I get this phone, and I'm looking around at the voicemail stuff. And here's recorded messages. And there was one called joke or something, or silly. I don't remember what it was. But I go, what the hell is that? I was like, where'd that come from? Did I record that? Did I name that? So I listened to it and I went, oh my gosh, who the hell is that? And then I heard a joke I wrote. And I went, oh, that's me. Oh, so I go, oh, wow. So I actually went out to my wife. I'm like, is this me? And she's like, yeah, from probably, a few years ago, yeah. But I was like, dang, it's not that I wouldn't have recognized it. I didn't. So it's crazy. It becomes so natural to you that you will hear your old voice and go, what the? Oh, another thing I want to say, here's the other thing too. This is something, let's see, I started working with an SLP in 2022. So it was September, October of 2022. So that's been now, 3 years. I heard a video of mine because, there was some platform that was like, hey, remember this from a year ago? And I went, no, I don't. And I looked at it, or I hit it, and I went, wow, is that how I sounded? Like, it changed even over the course of, just the past year, which blew my mind. So I think it's something that continues to grow with you for a long, long time. The more that you express who you are, the more it becomes part of you. So let me do quick station identification, because that's what I'm supposed to do. This is what the agency I'm streaming through tells me to do. Anyway, I'm Dr. Amethysta Herrick. I speak about identity and gender. I am a scientist and a transgender woman, and so I'm answering your questions right now. So ask me one. This is great feedback too. Thank you, Angela. You do have to accept that people are going to look at you strangely. There have been people. There was a guy. Who the hell was that? Oh, I do remember who it was. There was a guy I worked with when I was an undergraduate. We worked in the same chemistry lab, and this was maybe a year ago. I don't even remember when I talked to him, but he reached out to me through like LinkedIn or something. Reaches out and says, "Hey, we haven't talked in a long time. You want to talk?" And I was like, "Sure. I mean, apparently I've gone through some changes, right?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm totally on board with it. Hope you feel better. Whatever, let's catch up." So we caught up. We're like on whatever, Zoom or whatever the hell. And the first words out of my mouth, I'm just like, this is so weird. Because I used to make jokes about this guy about, like the new Pearl Jam album. There was a song called Daughter. I don't know what the album was. Versus, I think it was called. And for what it's worth, when I was younger, Eddie Vedder was a huge vocal influence on me. The first album. I think after the first album, I kind of went, But the first album with that very rich, rich and open voice, it was a huge influence on me, on my own vocal style. So there was this song called Daughter, and I don't know how we turned it into Don't Call Me Duder, but when we talked again, it was, that came up. It was like, how funny. Anyway, so it did feel weird. But I came on screen, he hadn't seen me in, 30 years probably, and was just like, oh, so this is you now. Great. You look good. You look happy. Hope you're doing well. It is sort of strange, but so Matt, this is a great comment. So Matt says he knows how trans people are more likely to be autistic than cis people, but he doesn't recall by how much. Yeah, I don't know if there's a causation. Agreed that there is a correlation. And it was interesting in this Daily Mail article that, there's somebody who's like, oh yeah, well, we know there's a genetic component to gender dysphoria. And I was like, we do? What? Because I know that there are certainly lines of genetics that tend to be more, tend to have greater incidence of neurodiversity. But I think there was a correlation. I doubt that there was a causation. This is my own personal opinion, and I know I've had somebody who was like, you're wrong. Well, several scientists actually, and you can read it in public on the Daily Mail. All right, let me see. So there you go. So you've had no diagnoses. So Margie says she's had no diagnoses of neurodiversity, except for complex PTSD, which finally I heard is in the DSM. I think it's in the text revision of DSM-5, and I wasn't aware that I didn't think it had been in there. So anyway, but somebody told me, yeah, so hopefully it is. Anyway, yeah, diagnoses. I guess I continue to go, is a diagnosis necessary? There was, somebody sent me an article just this morning, well, last night, because they're in like the Netherlands, I think. And this person was saying, we have the tendency, I'm going to hide this now. We have the tendency, at least in the, in Western society, always to look at something that is outside of what would be normal. It's outside of the norm, something that doesn't conform to social norms. There we go. I think that's the best way I'll put it. As a pathology. And I totally agree. We do, and I actually have written a bunch about the pathologization of being human. And I find that's, that we would look at something just like gender as a pathology. It just seems weird to me. So, anyway, diagnoses. Uh, I think that each of us has something that somebody else would look at and go, okay, well, that's odd. I wouldn't behave like that, but you do you. And I don't know. The problem that I see is that we need a diagnosis. We need a pathology before we are able to do anything about it, specifically in Western society. If we don't get a diagnosis, then pretty much we languish languish away. And I mean, here's Margie saying that the complex PTSD was diagnosed in 2012. I don't know that it was in DSM-4 because 2012 would be DSM-4. DSM-5 was originally was published in 2015. So I know PTSD was in there, but the idea of having it be a complex that could be caused by several factors rather than, because I mean this textbook explanation of PTSD is a single traumatic event or within a short period of time, but or at least the same traumatic event. Complex would imply chronic to a certain extent, as well as multiple forms of trauma. So anyway, moving on. What else? There was something else that we had here. Address it like that. Oh yeah, okay. So thank you. So I knew Marina. Yeah, I knew you had told me about Marina before, Margie. This is so. Here's good. So Angela, I swear I'm going to get to this question. So Angela now says she can't do her old default voice. I know it ends up getting weird. So when somebody goes, "Oh, what did you sound like before?" I have to I have to wait a second and go, "Hang on, I've got to release this muscle memory," because you do get muscle memory. Because the first thing, at least with vocal feminization, that they want to teach you is what it feels like to raise your larynx, because raising your larynx makes the vocal tract smaller, and so you get wave overtones that are of a higher frequency. It's the point, because of the size of the vocal tract. No matter the pitch, the overtones are higher because it's a resonance. It's a resonance effect, not, which is why it's called resonance, by the way. Playing with your resonance. So anyway, yeah, it's weird. Now my muscles are used to holding my larynx up, and so if somebody wants me to do something different, I actually have to, I have to. I mean, I can do it on purpose, which I do when I'm breathing through my whatever we call this thing. When I'm breathing through this, I can change it, but I can't keep it. Like, I can't keep it. It's weird. All right, here we go. Here we go. This was a good one. When did I first realize that I was transgender, and when did I start to do something about it? So I've told this story before. I did grow up with 3 sisters. And all 3 of my sisters, when I came out and said I was going to transition, all 3 of them were like, of course, because that's who you are, and we've known this your whole life. I would say I was well aware by, 4 or 5. Or I don't want to say well aware. What I want to say is that it was clear that the way I viewed myself was not the way my parents viewed me. I had no verbiage for it, obviously. I had no, I didn't know how to label the experience. All I knew was that the way that I perceived myself was different from the way that my parents did. Interestingly, I don't think my sisters perceived me the same as my parents. That's my opinion. So I would say I was single digits when I would, I would dress in dresses that were just in the closet. Because, all 3 of my sisters, my oldest sister is 6 years older than I am. No, 4? 4. I think she's 4 years older than I am. And so, there were always dresses in the closet, and so I would just dress in those. We would play. And that was totally normal to me. And then at some point, my parents were like, you stop that. So I did. And I would say by maybe 8 years old, like it was clear that being who I am was wrong. Absolutely wrong. And I think that sucks. I think that sucks to be 10 years old. And then I went through puberty and it was even worse because it's like, well, I know who I am. And then I'm watching my body change and I'm like, oh, my sister's got, and I'm getting. So I would say when I first started doing something about it, I mean, I was definitely dressing in women's clothing during high school, absolutely during my undergraduate years. And then I would probably say it was not until graduate school that I really, I was going to use the word embraced. But embraced just sounds like you go, oh, you're doing it. I think accepted is the better way to say it. I really accepted who I was. And not only did I accept it, I thought of it as a power. Is that the word I want to use? Like, I thought of it as like a something special about me. The people in Georgia at the time, by the way, certainly confirmed that. They said, well, that definitely makes you special. But I started really playing into it. And so it was, my 20s. So I guess 24 is when I got to Georgia. So, I had a few years in there where I was just like, well, this is me. And it felt great. I would have been 30. So in 2001, at the very beginning of 2001, I was married to somebody and our divorce was final. So I would have been 30 years old. In 2001, I started investigating what it would take to transition because I was well aware I was going to. So 2001, I started looking into it and it was really difficult. I mean, I was like, this is just not going to work for me. So then I put it on the back burner for another 2 decades. And finally I did something at 52. I wish I could say it was earlier. It was something I've always known about myself. But I don't know. Social norms are so difficult. Social norms are so difficult. And I appreciate this, Margie. Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we get trained. We get trained that who we are is wrong, not our actions. And I've brought this up to a few people, like psychologists, who go, no, we only think about behavior. And it's like, we don't think about behavior. I mean, I have viewer comments. I had that one comment where the person said, I'm going to mourn my girly granddaughter. Mourn her. It's not the behavior. It is that we ourselves are wrong. And I don't, now I'm designated a domestic terrorist apparently for being transgender. These are people. This is not behavior. So anyway, I mean, I think it's, heartbreaking. Like Margie says, it's totally heartbreaking because I think there are people who could be so much happier. And what happens? They end up, denying it for decades, as Brenda says. Denying it for decades. And many of us don't even make it through. I don't know how many people that I've spoken to who are gender diverse tell me stories about them attempting suicide. Because it's typical. It's really horrific. And to think that we're doing this for fun, we're doing this to harm other people is just ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous. I'm going to end up moving on a little bit here. So Margie, I think we're saying the same things. I think we're saying the same thing. I don't think that's causal. I think that both neurospicy people examine and question social norms more, and people with gender dysphoria do it because we've already known that those social norms don't apply to us. So I don't think it's causal, although I do believe that there is an overlap. I mean, I think there's What would we call that? A Venn diagram? I already had one failed partial differential equation joke earlier. Am I going to go for another math joke? Maybe I shouldn't. What else do we have? Sorry. Causality and awareness. I see what you're saying. So if you have somebody who's neurospicy, they may not be aware of or they question social norms, then go, hey, does that even apply to me? So I see what you're saying, and I like that. I like that. Here's an interesting. So this is interesting. So Brenda says she's found she can't hit the lower frequencies that she used to with ease. When I was, oh gosh, this was in 20, I don't know. I know, it was 2023. It was the end of 2023, September or so, August, September of 23. I took a vacation and, it was like a few days away. Just me. Like I went off alone, which is atypical for me. Anyway, I went up to the mountains and I was just, I had a hotel room there, just hung out. But at some point, I love to sing in the car. Love to sing in the car. And I was driving around mountain roads. And I said to myself, I'm like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put on Pearl Jam. Speaking of Pearl Jam. And one of my early vocal influences. And it was so different. It's so different to try to sing some of those things with different muscle memory. So I had to approach them very differently. And it's interesting now because there's another song. Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting? Oh, so Mike Patton of Faith No More is really good at messing with resonance. Like he will have one line that's really super bright, and then he'll go down to something that's not bright at all. Within one line. So he was really good at messing with both pitch and resonance. And so that's another good one too. If you wanted to, if you wanted practice with resonance and pitch, Faith No More. Falling to Pieces is a great one that plays with both. But it was the same. It's the same. Now I find I will go to lower pitches, but my resonance is still pretty bright. So I'll still have like a low pitch with a bright resonance, and I'm like, that sounds weird. So anyway, it is pretty interesting. I like this too. So Margie says she can sing from pretty low bass through tenor and alto and smoothly into falsetto. Yeah, you mentioned this before, that you've conquered your passaggio. It's called. It's fascinating to me. By doing the training that I did, I think all I did was build up a whole lot of, I'm just going to use the word facility, because I think it's close enough. But I built up a lot of facility in moving my larynx, manipulating my larynx. That's the international sign for, what I do? Manipulating your larynx. So I built up a lot of facility, but I think you build up a lot of strength. And so, yeah, you start to be able to do all kinds of crazy stuff that I think is awesome. So, what else do we have? Okay, so we do have some comments. So oops, let me hide that one. Sorry. Right, so Margie says we both started at 52. So, it's interesting. So Margie says she's been, let me just show this. Why am I going to read it without showing it? I think a lot of us do this, that we're aware that something's different. I was going to use the word wrong. We're aware that we are bumping up against social, look, Hippie Chick Heather just joined. Hi, Hippie Chick Heather. Heather, good to see you. We are aware that we bump up against social norms, but a lot of us won't acknowledge it. And for what it's worth, I think the acknowledgement is one of the most difficult aspects of gender transition. I know that a lot of times we're calling that, your egg cracking, I think. But I think, as Margie says, sometimes the dysphoria is masked by abuse. It's almost always masked by shame. We are shamed into hiding it. And I mean, if I can go back to that comment, the viewer comment that I had at the very beginning, where somebody was going to mourn mourn their grandchildren, we have the tendency to hide who we are so that other people feel comfortable. I think there is no surprise that if you look at the gender diverse community, almost all of us are people pleasers. There are very few who are not, because I think that's what we learn. If you don't please people, you might end up shamed. You might end up in danger. So, um, so let's see. So this is good. So thank you. So Angela is saying, Angela says that she knew properly when she was 16. Yeah, it didn't change until you were 30. Yeah. So I think that's super frequent. Super frequent. So, here we go. So let's see. So Angela asks, when I transitioned, did I always want bottom surgery? Do you know I didn't? I never expected to. In fact, I have a friend, one of the very first people who knew that I was considering myself transgender. I'm using sort of cagey language here because it was right at the beginning of 2022. And it was like, oh, I'm thinking about being transgender. I'm thinking about transition. So this is somebody I met, and she and I were just talking. And one of the things she said to me was, I would love to be able to be both. Basically to wear a beautiful dress out to dinner with, push-ups and everything, and then go home and then have, rage and sex with what trans joy brings on from Shiver Me Timbers. So I kind of understood that. I never wanted surgery. I didn't. And it was really sort of strange. It was I think it was just sometime in 2023. It was about mid 23. So I'd finished all my social transition. It'd been months since I'd finished social transition, and I just remember I was thinking, the quick story is that I looked at my wife without clothing on, and I went, oh gosh, I wish I could have one of those. And then I went, I do? And then I went, huh, maybe I do. And so I spent a lot of time with that thought, because I don't think it's necessary. I don't think, there are people, what do we call these people? The transmedicalists, right? You must get surgery or you're not truly transgender. I think that's crap. I think that's utter and total crap. And, because I think there are many, many people who are very, very transgender who will never have the opportunity to do it. And so I that's a bummer. I don't think that makes you less valid. And I was surprised, honestly, to choose it. I was surprised. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. On the other hand, and thank you for being a foil for me, Margie. I did always want boobs. Always. Like that would have been my favorite part. It is right now my favorite parts of having gone through all of this, And, I responded to estrogen pretty well. That was what I really wanted. And so as it happened, right, as I was going through puberty, I kept on going, what's happening? How come nothing's happening? Come on. So that was always true. So I did end up getting some surgery, a little bit of surgery on top. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I did get surgery. I don't want to say a little bit, you can only get a little bit of something. But yeah, that was all I ever thought about was boobs. Never even considered bottom surgery until later on. So, no doubt that waiting for it is brutal. So I saw something. This was, I can't remember where I saw this. It's in a Scottish newspaper or a Scottish, where did I see this? Oh, I do know where it was from. there is a there's a sort of like what I have, where with Purple Parkland, there is a group called Queer AF, and they're British. Queer AF. I actually highly recommend them. They have really good content, and some of it exceptionally thoughtful. They also go through a lot of news things. So this is not a plug, but they go through a lot of news items, and some of them are really it's really exceptional. Like sort of rereading the news. It's like queer eye for the news reader kind of person. So anyway, they showed in Scotland right now. I can't remember, there's a city, and there are only so many gender clinics, right, in the UK. One of them, and I think it was in Belfast, has at this point, no shit, a 224-year wait list. I want to let that sink in for a moment. 224. That was the worst in the UK. But the best, I think, was still 2, which is all right. But most of it hovered around, anywhere from I didn't do the math. I suppose I could have done the math. But I didn't do like an average, a median, and a mode. I didn't look. But I would say it was on the order of 6 to 10 years that you're looking at, which is just ridiculous. So anyway, waiting for it is brutal, especially if what you're going to have to do is go through 4 lifetimes before you get it. Right? Whew. All right. Let me see. What do we have here? Okay, so Angela, thanks Angela for your story. So Angela says when she realized she was trans in the 1970s, it was the norm to have bottom surgery. Yeah. The thing is, I remember that being the only thing, for what it's worth. I wasn't sure, because it was probably early 80s. It was about early 80s or so that I realized I was going to transition at some point. But I don't know, it's weird. Because there were shows, I'm trying to think of like Soap or something. I think there was a character who was transgender. My point was just going to be here that was the only thought, was that of course you're going to have bottom surgery. That's what you do. So I don't know. It was kind of strange to me that even when I started, when I was 30 years old, even when I looked into it when I was in Los Angeles, that I was still kind of like, well, what do you do, right? Because I'm thinking, well, I'll dress. There's got to be something I can do. Can you get rid of hair, And looking into it, I was like, oh, estrogen therapy. Like, that makes perfect sense, right? Because with my biology background, I'm like, oh, cool. And so I just didn't really think about it. It always seemed like it was going to be something that was way, 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 off, that I was never going to do. So, I'll play along with you. Sure, I do. I would love to hear your questions. Nothing rude or pushy. If you don't mind dropping them in the comments here, yeah, I will address them as best I can. So I'm just going to call you Random, because Casson's so Randall. I don't know. I don't speak French. Although, if you go to CMC GRS in Montreal, clearly Genevieve might. So, wait, is this for real? GRS at Montreal does 14 gender surgeries a week? Wow. So I'm going to tell you, too, when I... Because everybody knows, right? I went to Thailand to get my surgery done, in part because I was looking at like a 7-year waiting list. And when I went there, so that just the one place that I went to, and this was only one hospital, they had like 4 or 5 people. I'm trying to remember the number, but they had several people who would do, couple surgeries a day. Mine was longer, so I don't think the day that mine was done that the guy did more than just mine. But they had 5, they were probably doing, it wouldn't surprise me if they had greater than 10 every day. And that was just Yanhee International Hospital. There are several sort of boutique clinics, gosh, I mean, I could think of, 10, probably 10 of them at least, in just in the Bangkok area. So Thailand was all over the place with it. There's no doubt that certainly the US, the UK, and Canada, we're not doing it as much as we certainly could. But there are political reasons that I think we all know. Kason, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this up. First of all, I want to say something to you, Kason. Thank you very much for coming here and asking me questions. I appreciate that. So I'm just going to say that first. I haven't even looked at your question. And thank you. Here we go. I'm actually going to pop that up if you don't mind. So Kason says, I'm not here to debate you or anything of the sort. I just want to make that clear. Thank you. All right, so let me pop this one back up. So Kason says, I am a Christian, and before I ask anything, I want you to know I will never force religion. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that at least in part because, as it turns out, Christianity did not always, and does not now, I believe, from biblical passages. Sorry, I should say the Bible, I don't believe, condemns being transgender or being gay. This is based on Hebrew scholars and then Greek scholars later on when you're looking at the New Testament, the Gospels in particular. All right, so your first question, when did I decide to become transgender? I don't think that there is a decision, just flat out. I don't believe that there's, and Margie just put that in the comments as well. I think she says it very well. Our choice is whether we recognize being transgender publicly. So Angela asked a similar question earlier, and so Kason, I'll answer this. I'll answer this again. I was aware of a disconnect between the way I perceived myself and the way my parents treated me by the time I was 4 or 5 years old. It was very, very clear to me. By 8 years old, I was well aware that my understanding of identity differed from the rest of society's. By about 12 years old, so this would have been early 1980s, just so you know, by the time I was 12 years old or so, I had already made the decision that someday I would transition gender. So I don't know I think this probably answers both of your questions. We don't decide. I personally was able to recognize it within single-digit years of my life. What brought me, I actually have a slightly different story here, because when you say what brought me to being transgender, I want to mention there are two states here, and you're getting something from Margie, something from Genevieve. There are 2 states. One is being transgender, which sometimes can be hidden for an entire life, and then transitioning gender. So one is a state of being, one is an action, if that makes sense. You start off transgender and then you might transition gender. They don't always overlap. Those are 2 groups of people, and I think the having transition gender is much smaller than the being transgender group. But what brought me to it? This is an interesting question. I've been in science all my life. In fact, actually, I guess now's a good time for station identification. I'm Dr. Amethysta Herrick, background in biology and chemistry, talking about gender and identity. I'm taking any question that you've got for me. So I have a background in science, which is very heavily, both biology less so, but chemistry very heavily skewed toward men, specifically when I was going through. When I finished graduate school, when I finished a Ph.D. in chemistry, I went into technology, also very highly skewed toward men. Both of those fields also tend to have people who, they have to show you that they're right. They have to show you that you're wrong. I think that's the better way, better way to say it. It's very alpha male type behavior. And although I was in technology for 25 years, I very much struggled with those people, those kinds of people. Because I got up into executive management. I built teams. I built products for companies, went from nothing to, the product for a company. So I did fine at managing people, who reported to me. But I was terrible at going into meetings and fighting with people for some sort of, alpha male, brownie points. I guess it wouldn't be brownie points because that's Girl Scouts, right? I wouldn't do that. So where I'm going with this, Kason, is that I really struggled my entire career to express who I am. And I've struggled as a result of people telling me I was wrong being who I am. I really struggled with mental health. And finally in 2021, I had a breakdown. I'll just say a breakdown. And it was my wife who knew from the day or very first date, literally, that I'm transgender. End of 2021, she said, listen, I really want you to explore your gender. And it only took me about 5 months before I said, you know what, I got to do this. I got to do this. I did not for as long as I didn't. I held off primarily because, I struggled first with substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and then our son was born. And so I hid myself again. I think most of us end up transitioning gender not because we want to, because it's very clear that our society today, Western society, does not welcome people like me, certainly in the United States here. But we have to. We don't choose to, but we do have to. So I hope, Kason, that was a comprehensive answer. I'd love to answer more, if you've got them. So, yes, Sancordia, I think is how you're going to say that. Do I ask my question here in the chat? Yes, please do. Arham, I'm not sure exactly how to say your name. So I'm hoping Arham is right. Thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate that. Yes. I believe that seeing transgender people thrive is the most beautiful thing you can possibly see. On that note, I actually just put out a transgender joy video, which I generally do on Fridays. This one came out yesterday. But there are two major, so there was a photo exhibition that just opened in another place recently by Gwen Anderson called Becoming Ourselves. That's pretty cool. There was a book by an author called Nico Lang, and that one's called American Teenager. And beautiful story. So if you love this seeing us thrive, there was a bunch that just happened this week, and I think it's beautiful, personally. So, all right, let me see. What do we got here? So, Kason says, yes, I personally believe that in the Bible it condemns the LGBTQ ideas. I can bring up specific articles and verses if needed. Yes, you can. There's a couple of things. So I know there's more that you have to say here. The reason why I say I don't believe that it is necessarily condemned in the Bible, there are certainly things that in the Old Testament that for the sake of hygiene were recommended against. If you look at, for instance, and then our interpretations, I think, play into these as well, our modern interpretations. I'm going to just go with in Genesis. If you look at the story of Noah and his son Ham, Noah gets blitzed. Hey, thank you, Vincent. I'm good to see you. Noah gets blitzed on wine. It was a Hebrew festival. Sorry, it's a Jewish festival, and Ham, sees his nakedness, as they put it, right? What's interesting is that the way that it's interpreted now, if you look at something like that, it has to do. I mean, here is somebody. First of all, it's a son and his father, right? It's also rape, and it's not just rape. It's rape of somebody who is passed out drunk. So, like, to pull from that story only that being gay is bad seems really strange to me. Like, I would not believe that there was a God who was like, you know what, family relations, those are fine. Those are totally fine. Rape, that's okay too. I'm okay with that. But being gay, hell no, I'm putting my mark on you and sending you off to the land of Nod. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. There are many, many instances, not many, many, but, obviously Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus in the Gospels has is friends. We believe that Jesus might have been married to a prostitute. History people believe that. This is not somebody who was preaching that you should hate other people for being different. What you have been taught, and this is not a debate necessarily, but if what you have been taught is that modern interpretations condemn queer ideas. It so happens, by the way, Jerusalem had a huge community on the outside. It used to be queer people were tended to be the oracles and the seers, the magicians, and the people who conferred sovereignty. I'm saying that because generally the people in Jerusalem, the kings of Jerusalem, Alexander the Great was one of them, went to this community of probably gay and transgender people to have sovereignty conferred upon them, to become kings or queens. So anyway, I'm continuing. That was a long, long thing. I also want to mention, Kaysen, and I don't, again, here's the thing. I'm not giving you a lot of debate here. In the ecumenical councils, this was in the 4th and 5th century of the Common Era, you had several sects. I think there were 5 or 6 sects of Christianity. I'm just going to say that because it's fun. 5 or 6 sects of Christianity. Anyway, they came together and rewrote a lot because they had to. You had different sects that had different ideas, one of which was actually had to do with reincarnation, transmigration technically. So the spirit moves from body to body. Transmigration, not the same as reincarnation. So that was actually beaten out of 2 people, 2 sects. The leaders of those 2 sects were actually, I believe they were crucified in 436, I think it was, 346, in one of the ecumenical councils. That was the 3rd one. So these gospels, some of these gospels were rewritten around that time. There was a whole lot of change that came in terms of Christian beliefs and as we reached the medieval era. So, 12th century, 1200s on as well. So 12th century, 13th century, until about the Renaissance. That there were ideas that were brought in that weren't part of the Bible. I'm just going to say. So anyway, sorry about all of that. How is it possible that you can be born transgender? I think it's the exact same way. So I'm going to come clean on you here. So I have, oh my gosh, I'm also falling way behind on comments. I apologize. Sancordia, I see you're already putting something on there. I have a theory of identity on my own. So a theory of identity and gender. Usually you'll see 2, and Sancordia, this actually plays into what you're saying. Generally you have 2 sides. In fact, actually, I'm going to pop that up if you don't mind, because Kaysen, this does address what you're trying to say. You generally have 2 arguments. One is that identity, and by extension gender, is biological, purely biological. In fact, you'll see XXXY which, as with my background as a geneticist, for what it's worth, molecular biology was originally what I started studying in as an undergraduate. Not even close to the truth. That it is not XXXY and much more complicated than that. But one side says, well, we've got clear delineations with genetics, which should drive your sex, which does drive your gender, which drives your sexuality. And so this is your identity across an entire spectrum of human experience. That's wrong, demonstrably wrong, because we have people who demonstrate against it. But on the other side, then we have biologists who will say, well, we can't define sex. And as a result, we can't define gender. But that's never been true. I mean, you can observe biology and see that we can define sex, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with genetics. It doesn't have to do with structure, because it's a concept that goes out across biology, not humanity. We are one species in nature. So, to go back. So you struggle because I'm coming in the middle here. So Kaysen also says, how are you born trans? So first of all, I would say that those are the two competing sides, and Sancordia completely agree. I would say most people on both sides of the debate lack understanding. I actually did a whole live stream on that 2 or 3 months ago. I think it might have been in June, because I've struggled with that. And, I've watched people go, I want to debate you. I'm going to debate you about biology. And I go, cool. What's your background? And they go, oh, well, I was a computer scientist. And I'm like, and you're going to talk to me about biology? And they go, well, yeah, I've read a bunch of political arguments. And I go, I don't really care. If you've never been in a biology lab, if you've never taken a biology course, you are not part of this debate. I appreciate that you have political beliefs, and I believe you should, but you are not part of the debate. So anyway, so Sancordia, hopefully I got to that one. All right, so Kaysen, you said you've struggled with mental health. The point I was going toward here is that we generally see this debate that holds up to what I believe are straw man type arguments. It's like we're going to come up with sort of false arguments that end up falling apart, and not a big deal. In my theory of identity and gender, which I believe is demonstrable, we have an origin of identity. There are things that we know, but we don't know why we know them. My sort of canonical example is to say, you probably have a favorite vegetable. And I use that because most people don't argue about it. Like, they don't go, no, you can't like broccoli. That's it, I'm regulating broccoli lovers out of existence, But there's knowledge that we have that we know, we just know it. At some point, if you were to ask why, you have to go, Cause it's true. Like, broccoli is my favorite vegetable. Why? Because I don't see a difference with being transgender. There are certain things that we know we like. Part of what I like is expressing femininity. And yes, that is more complicated. And Sancordia brings it up as well. It is a complex subject. And, gender as a whole is, spans many different facets of the human existence, our experience. Our physicality, the things that we know, how we've tried to survive within a social environment. So anyway, how are we born transgender? The same way that other people are born cisgender. The same way some people are born to like asparagus instead of broccoli. Because we have knowledge that we don't know where it comes from. It's just things we know. I have opinions on where those come from, but I would have been booted out of the Third Ecumenical Council with those two people who believed in transmigration. So I like how I was able to bring that back around. Let me see. Informed can say it's, oh my gosh. There are so many of these. Here we do. Okay, so Sancordia. So, Kaysen, hopefully that did something. I know there was a big, long rant there. So I, I, I mean, I'm just going to read this first. So I've seen well-meaning people at college identify as non-binary just because they like to paint their nails. They really have no idea. It's a fascinating point. When I first started writing at all, so that's only been a few years now. When I first started writing and doing any of my own work, particularly when I started Transition a few years ago, I didn't like the word queer, because like lesbian I can get, like that's straightforward. Gay, pretty straightforward. Bisexual, I've been pansexual my whole life. I get that. Transgender, I got that. I'm a little concerned that, transgender implies that sex and gender are on the other side of each other. That implies a relationship that doesn't, a causal relationship that doesn't exist. But, Tyler, I'm going to get to you. Give me one sec. But then queer just seemed like a fashion statement. Like, I'm going to paint my nails and look, I'm queer. But here's sort of my point. I like that idea. I've gotten to a point where I go, I don't care what label you want to end up using. I like the word queer, because I think what it can imply is just anybody who goes against gender norms. Or I don't even know if I would say gender norms. Certain social norms. You're queer. I think that means that queer people would probably outnumber the supposedly cishet people, but there you go. I'm just going to pop this up. I agree that ignorance is much worse on the opposition side. Yeah, they don't want to try. I mean, it's a complicated subject, and I think the main thing here, Sancordia, is that what we have not done is something really truly scientific. My background is in science, right? I learned that when you're a scientist, what you do is you observe the universe. Science is not a collection of facts, right? Science is the process of observing the universe. So why would we not do that with sex and gender? We did do it way, way back when we defined the word sex as the delivery of a particular gamete. And then gender came in around that. But we want to talk only about humans. And we not only do we want only to talk about humans, we also want to turn that into legislation quickly. And so I don't think we've done like a full, like actual scientific treatise on human identity. And so anyway, that's what I did over the past few years. I don't know. The ignorance is bad all over, I think I'll say. Because we want to make political decisions. So, all right, here we go. I think Tyler has a really phenomenal question, and I'm so sorry, everybody, that I'm totally dropping some of these contents. It's taken a while. All right, so Tyler says, "Hi, Emmy. Hi. Do you personally feel a connection to your identity pre-transition?" I think. Oh, so here we go. So Tyler also says. So Tyler, if you could help me, hopefully you've put pronouns in the chat here. I do not see them. I'm going to say he just because I'm looking at a Tyler. I'm going to just use they because I think it's easier. So, and welcome, by the way, Tyler. Thank you, Margie, for also being like laying out the welcome mat. Hi, Docile. Thank you for joining. So Tyler also says they've spent their life building their own identity and transitioning is just the next step in their personal identity journey. I 100% agree. I struggled really hard with the idea that I lived 52 years, right? Which is weird. But the old person went to undergraduate. These things that I'm talking about where I said, oh, my background's genetics. Well, who was that background? Whose was that background? It was the whole person. So my background, so I had my, I had, my undergraduate, my graduates, and then I had a whole career in technology and as well as academia in chemistry. How do I throw that away? Not to mention, I also, we had a son. I don't think that you can get rid of your identity. And I think you can't get rid of your identity pre-transition because you only ever build on things. You start off, I was mentioning it before, we have an origin of identity, but that origin of identity still has to exist in the entire social environment. That's how we become who we are. The way that I've written about this, and I don't know if it's a great way, but the way I think of it is that our origin of identity is like a grain of sand. Like a grain of sand that ends up going into a oyster, into an oyster, and we accrete, that's the word for it, by the way, we accrete our experiences. And ultimately the person we are is that whole package. It's the whole pearl. We can't get rid of the rest of the pearl, especially because it's on the inside. Like I couldn't just go, I'm going to just scrape the crap out of the pearl, cut it in half, scrape that crap out and stick it back together. I don't think we can. So that's my opinion. Hopefully that worked for you, and I'm sorry you waited 10 minutes to to get there. There was I find this fascinating. So you passed out pronoun pins during Pride Week, Sancordia says, and the they them went so fast. I've got I'm trying to figure out how much I want to talk about somebody else. There's somebody I know, and this person says, I want to use they, them pronouns because I looked at the behavior of boys. I looked at masculine behavior, I looked at feminine behavior, and I don't really resonate with either. I don't want to be seen as a boy, I don't want to be seen as a girl. So I want to use they, them pronouns. I don't think I mind that. I hear what you're saying, that it's like, listen, at least like think about this, or, what is your gender? But I like the idea of people being questioning as well. Because the more we question what's going on, I think the more we'll end up coming to answers, our own answers. So I don't know. I kind of go both directions. I've known a lot of people now who have they, them pronouns, and I kind of agree. I'm like, wow, that's a whole lot of people. So, are we really all non-binary? And I think the question is, ultimately, yeah, we are all non-binary. None of us fulfills every masculine social norm. None of us fulfills every feminine social norm. So, I think that's what we're looking at. So, thank you for that comment. And here you go. This is great. I do appreciate this. In case, and I hope we did I miss anything of yours? I hope I didn't. Okay. Where was this one? Here it is. Agreed. I think there are a lot of people who think that it is all physical, that gender, first of all, is all physical. There's no doubt that's usually what we think about first. When somebody goes gender, oh, well, are you wearing a dress or are you wearing pants? I think that's a social thing, but just because society uses those phrases or has that common understanding doesn't mean that scientifically that's what occurs. I keep bringing that up because I've had people go, well, this is what people think. And I go, I don't really care. I don't care that the entire Republican Party believes, and I don't think it's the entire one, that you can define identity at conception. I don't care because it's scientifically not the case. So, and yes, what a great point. Even naked and alone, transgender people are still transgender. Although I would ask this question, I did have a question, I think I even wrote an article about this some time ago. I have questioned, like, do you really have gender on a desert island? Like, if I had nobody else I had to care about, would I allow, because I still have a little bit of facial hair, would I allow that to grow out? I guess it would be tough, if I didn't have, like, obsidian or something. I don't know. I don't want to get into the practical parts of it, but do we have gender without some sort of social parts of it? I think we do. And Judith Butler might disagree, being a social constructionist, but there you go. This is an interesting, human development. So Angela makes a great point. I'm saying all babies do not start out as female. The way human development works is that the Mother has to secrete testosterone, as Angela is talking about. If the mother does not secrete testosterone, and if the fetus is not sensitive to testosterone, it will not, the fetus will not develop male reproductive parts. By default, unless you have testosterone, a fetus will develop female reproductive parts. So anyway, it's a great point, Angela. I'm not disagreeing with you. There's wording is a little, I'm being a little semantic on you. This is a great point. Yeah, cannot distinguish between transgender and transvestite. It is interesting now, though, because if you look in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, already an ugly way to put that, they do make a distinction. Gender dysphoria is not a subclassification of transvestic disorder, I think it's called. Transvestic disorder, I think. For instance, autogynephilia is a subclassification of a transvestic disorder, not gender dysphoria. So, I mean, already sort of a fascinating thing. You know, you do hear people go, well, every transgender woman has autogynephilia. And then it's like, well, but these are even different things in, you know, your book, psychologists. But this is not something that we tend to talk about. And again, I'm going to go back to the whole point of really what we want to do is make legislation. Right? You know, when you come down to these questions, most people go, well, listen, I don't want people with penises in with my teenage daughter when she's going pee. I totally understand. I think that is a great point, and we should consider that. I don't think we should start making new definitions, and I don't think we should ignore important definitions like the distinction between, you know, gender dysphoria and transvestic disorder, specifically autogynephilia, when we're really talking about, you know, sexual abuse. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Don't start coming after me. So, all right, sorry, moving on. Oh, gosh. Oh, my gosh. How did I end up with this? Okay, so Kason, thank you very much. You're throwing me a bunch of biblical verses. So here we go. Point on Jesus marrying a prostitute. Do I have any specific names of scholars or any people saying that? Dead Sea Scrolls? I mean, you know, I'm not even going to give you any scholars or people. That's Dead Sea Scrolls. There are many Gospels that were pulled out of the New Testament when the Third Ecumenical Council met and rewrote a lot of this stuff. So here we go. So Deuteronomy 22:5. Also, presumably you're also familiar with Leviticus 18:22. So a woman shall not wear a man's garment, nor shall a man put on a woman's cloak. For whoever does these things is an abomination. What does abomination mean? Abomination ends up being taken from another place. I don't remember where it is, but I mean, like the book. I think it's in Genesis, but it's applied certainly with the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abomination has a whole lot of context behind it. And just to give you an idea of what kind of context it has behind it, in Leviticus, there is one of the rules, right? Leviticus, the book of the law. Okay, the book of the law. Now, this is Mosaic law, too. I'm going to point out. Mosaic law. So this is the first covenant. All right, don't forget that. This is the first covenant that God had made with humanity, right? Not the second covenant that Jesus was supposed to have put together in the Last Supper. Just want to make that absolutely clear. In Leviticus, it was an abomination to violate any of those. Some of those laws were in the Ten Commandments. One of them is you should not eat meat of the cloven hoof. That had to do with hygiene, obviously, because pigs, which had cloven hooves, were messier animals than say something else, like a cow. So these things here, when you put in abomination, if an abomination is also somebody who eats meat, like who eats pork, Is this the same? I also want to say, too, I don't know what translation you're using. Translation is interesting. I'm going to bring this up right here. Genesis 1:27, the very first chapter of Genesis, was supposed to have been written by Moses 4,000 years ago. Do you think Moses had the words male and female? Because if you look at the Hebrew, and oh dang, of course I'm going to go blank on this guy's name. There's a really great Hebrew scholar who's very popular right now. Younger guy, maybe late 30s with a beard. Excellent person. He's looked at this particular verse. Is it male and female? Most likely not. I will also point out, just for the, because, Jesus even says this. At some point, Jesus says to rabbis, okay, people in the temple, he says to them, basically, your stuff's too difficult to understand. And I'm going to get to the point here. He says, this is what, you give strong meat for men, but milk for babes. Maybe you remember that particular quote. What he's talking about there is that a lot of the Pentateuch in particular, Genesis in particular, Mosaic law as well as what Moses is purported to have written, is an allegory on top of Jewish Kabbalah, which has to do with how humans get divorced from God, ultimately get moved away. I'm not using that in the legal sense, and you have to come up with some way to join back up. And if you look at some of these things, Adam Kadmon is the words that are used in Kabbalah. If you didn't get that, Adam. And then Chava, which those two right there, one means which gets anglicized to Eve, but Adam Kadmon means basically every man, all humanity. I don't want to say man. I think it's all humanity, but intending more of a masculine principle, and Chava meaning a feminine principle. And these are supposed to combine ultimately. And I mean, I could go on so much farther, but I'm not going to, because you can even just look at some of the words in Kabbalah. Anyway, some of the things that you're doing here are translations, and some of them have to do with interpretations, modern interpretations. It is not entitled to their opinions. Some of this turns into legislation. Yes, you're entitled to believe a certain thing. I don't believe you're entitled to put that on somebody else. And I don't think it's okay to debate somebody about biology when you have no idea what it is. Again, what I was trying to say before was that a lot of people are going to trying to justify a political opinion with biology, with a random fact of human development, or a random fact of some statistics having to do with human behavior. That's not biology. So anyway, I'm not dumping on you. I will say, when you look at Christianity, you're inheriting a long line, 2,000-year long line here of people who have changed what it means. 2,000 years is such a long time. Believe me, it's changed. And the thing is, we do that in science. In science all the time, we absolutely change our understanding of things. And if we're not going to do that with the Bible, I think that's ridiculous. Here we go. So, hedonist, I'm sorry, if you've waited this long, forgive me. Would I agree that the idea of expressing femininity, as you put it, leads to a reductive and narrow idea of what being a woman is? Surely women can wear trousers and men can paint their nails. I do think that it is a narrow and reductionist view of gender, yes. Because I don't think it comes down to a single social norm. Expressing femininity is something that we've seen change. I mean, this is one of Judith Butler's major points in calling this a social construct, is that we've seen gender norms change. My canonical example, of course, is wearing high heels, having lavish makeup, and bouffant level type hair was very masculine pre-revolution France, and those are feminine concepts now. So yes, I believe that there is a bigger complex around gender than like small physical social norms. So, all right, what do we got here? This is fascinating. Matt says, I think it's funny that we can all agree that trans women are women, trans men are men, and transphobes are bitches. I love it. All right, here we go. Jonas asks the question. Jonas Grumby. If you are unable to get pregnant, are you going to go to a fertility doctor to find the cause? Are you asking me? Because I'm relatively confident I can't get pregnant. I mean, I know that much. If you're talking in general, sure, some people do. I would also question whether we want to consider just the ability to have children, whether fertility is necessarily the measure of a woman. Is it the measure of a man to be able to have babies? Men obviously take part in reproduction. If we end up turning fertility into the definition of humanity, we are going down a really slippery slope to like Logan's Run, and then people who are dying, at 30. All right, Sancordia. This is just a question, but something I might be afraid to actually ask in real life. But when trans people change their name after transition, isn't that playing into the gender norms mindset? Oh, absolutely. Yes. And the thing that I would say here, I didn't go a lot into it in my own theory of gender, which spans quite a few papers. Okay, I do want to mention that. I see gender as a complex of four major aspects. One is physical, and that's pretty straightforward. It's our body. It would probably include clothes, makeup, or not. But there's also cognitive, things that we know about ourselves, things that we know. There's also behavioral, which is obviously driven by cognition, but also one of the biggest influences, which is as we express who we are as individuals, we have to do that within a social environment. And so the way that I think of gender is that it is a negotiation, ultimately. It's a mediator between who we know we are and what we can express in our social environment. If we don't feel safe expressing ourselves in our social environment, we don't. Which is how you can be transgender and yet not transition. So yes, I believe this is playing into gender norms, but because gender norms are part of our social environment. So it does, and I don't have a problem with playing into gender norms. I mean, because here are other things that I did. I grew my hair out. I ended up, getting estrogen therapy so that I could grow boobs. I changed my default voice. I changed to a chosen voice. Yeah. Now, some of that I would say was, again, for the sake of safety. I mean, I certainly don't want to go out in public and have somebody go, oh, I think it's time for me to take you out because you are who you are. So, this is an interesting point. So Jonas, I don't know if you, how many people in the history of human beings have both been able to get pregnant and get someone pregnant? A truly transgender person should be able to do that. The way the word is defined, if you were to think about this scientifically, it comes from Latin words, cis and trans, that actually come from describing a double bond initially in organic chemistry. If you never took OChem, you probably never saw cis and trans. But if you have a double bond, this is the double bond. Cis implies this, that you have two groups that are on the same side, because cis means on the same side of, that you have those on the same side of the double bond. If it's trans, let me see if I can do this with my hand. Nope. There we go. Trans implies opposite each other. So when you think of transgender, the reason why I don't like the word transgender, of course, wrote an article on that. The reason why I don't like the word transgender is because it necessarily brings sex and gender into essentially a double bond, like an actual real relationship. To say that if you have sex male, then then you better have gender masculine. If you in transgender would be the opposite. Sex male, sex masculine, gender feminine. Anyway, it does not sex male, gender feminine. So it does not have to do with being able to do both types of sex. You are actually talking about somebody who can deliver two types of gametes. So anyway, scientifically, hopefully that answered that question there. Okay, so I like this. Gender norms aren't necessarily bad. No, I don't think so. Many transgender people enjoy expressing their gender using those norms. Yeah, I think they only become bad, and I agree with Matt, they become bad when they're used to prohibit behavior. I end up using gender norms because those are the things I like. Like, I didn't choose these for fun. I mean, like, there's a reason why I would want to express myself like this. So, thank you so much. Thank you, Tyler. I'm glad the pearl analogy was good. Let me see. Oh, good. Thank you. Look, I got some backup. I am so far behind. Sorry, I swear I'm catching up. We are the sum of all our life experiences. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. I'm going to skim a couple of these. I'm going to show this. One of the problems with anti-trans rhetoric is that it's almost always reductionist. It has to be. It absolutely has to be. So, Matt, I will have to look at this. PMDS. Okay, thank you. Now I have something to look around, or something to look at. So this is fascinating here. The majority of cis women check all the factors for AGP. Well, I mean, if you divorce it from transvestic disorder, yes. And there's a long list of reasons why AGP is not a widely cited view by psychologists, but I mean, the main thing is it becomes exceptionally reductionist. I mean, it has to come down to you get excited by wearing particular clothes. And I'm going to make a point here too. Here's a fascinating point. The DSM definition of fetish means being aroused, getting aroused by something that is not strictly genitalia. Okay, genitalia. That means if you look at a girl and you go, ooh, nice boobs, nice butt, or man, look at a chest, nice butt. That is a fetish. You've been aroused by something that is not strictly genitalia. And guess what? We infrequently see genitalia when we're out at the market. I mean, I think this is a good thing. Don't misunderstand me. That might be a little odd. I mean, if you want to be nude, I'm cool with that. Okay, just saying. So, and I agree here. I'm willing to bet that the majority of cis men have the indicators of autoandrophilia. Agreed. Because I mean, it's. I think that when we do look at ourselves, yeah, if we're not looking at ourselves and going, I look good, we should change how we look. And that's one of the big long lists too, to go, wait a minute, if we like the way we look, that's now become a disorder, a mental disorder? All right, I'm not a believer. Why should people like me even care what the Bible says? Oh, here's the thing. Because the Bible says, Jesus says, I make you fishers of men. Just before the ecumenical councils met, here's a fascinating tidbit, just before the ecumenical councils met, a lot of, individually, this is interesting too, a lot of the leaders of Christian sects met with the Roman emperor at the time named Constantine, and all of the sects said, can you just eliminate the other sects? One of them used the phrase, this is the point, one of them used the phrase, you should keep our sect around because we are soldiers for Christ. Right? You've heard onward Christian soldiers stuff. There you go. Constantine went, hang on. You're telling me you have soldiers Well, I like this idea. I'm going to force you all to get in a room and beat each other up. A little bit of Christian history. A lot of Christians don't know, which is a bummer because I wish they did. So here we go. I love this is so there is so the second covenant bit, right? I mean, yes, agreed, because some of that, at least in the Lutheran liturgy, is the Nicene Creed, right? So there was an ecumenical council at Nicaea. So don't disagree. There is, in the Last Supper, right, Jesus is at least purported to have said, here's what I'm leaving you with. Don't be a dick, right? Love each other. So I love this. Most MAGA voters are Christians in name only. Yeah, pretty true. So Jessa, I'm seeing Jessa Love. Think I'm a little far before I get to you. Do I do debates? I think it depends on what we're talking about. I wouldn't mind. Is there something you wanted to debate? Is that the point? Oh dang, Sancordia's gone. Thank you for helping us all understand. Well, thank you, Sancordia. I appreciate you for showing up. That was pretty awesome. I do want to pop this one up. The Southern Baptist Convention has been dealing with congregations rejecting Jesus' teachings as too woke for more than a decade, for about a decade. So, oh, Astro Ranger, thank you. There's a lot of Deuteronomy and Leviticus, both that, in fact, the entire chapter of Leviticus 18 has to do with preserving social and religious boundaries. Yes. When you think of Deuteronomy, I don't know, they would say pagan practices, but certainly Jewish practices versus non-Jewish, and agreed. Practices and role confusion. So thank you, by the way, Astro Ranger. I appreciate you popping that into the chat here. Because there's another one. A lot of Leviticus 18 has to do with property rights. So that's kind of fascinating. And agreed. Cross-dressing was sometimes part of, well, so again, non-Jewish, let's say, because pagan has a different meaning. Even its initial meaning, which comes from the Latin paganus, just meant rustic, living outside, far enough outside that it was kind of costly to send a priest out there to convert everybody. So, but yes, crossing genders, I think I would put it, demonstrating the liminality of gender is huge in fertility and temple rights. I mean, at this point, if you look at Wicca, which admittedly is only 75 years old here, but there's a huge amount of liminality between masculine and feminine, so that there ends up being, greater things. If you look at a lot of Western magical tradition, it stresses the liminality of the masculine and the feminine. So anyway, thank you, Astro Ranger. I didn't see any of these, obviously. What do we got? Deuteronomy. The commandments set forth for the Israelites by Moses. Yeah. Okay. So, Matt, what am I? Yeah. Was that a response to something? Maybe I missed something. Forgive me. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Inanna. A special role for trans femme priestesses. Well, I mean, you can look at, there are Greek ones as well, forgetting the priestesses. Not Elysian. Oh, shoot. I wish I could remember. But you may remember. Here we go. Look, Jesus loves you. Learn to love yourself. Margie says I did. That's why I transitioned. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Margie. What do we have here? I want a three moms. I love everyone except for Nazis and phobes in a totally non-creepy way. Same. Oh, I can hide this. Sorry. Let me see. Oh, I like this. Thank you, Angela. Yes, I think you're right. We do have to conform a little bit, at least, if just because there's safety involved. Absolutely. Let's see. So Astro Ranger, I loved the earlier stuff. I don't want to the word ism, transgender ism, implies that there is a common set of beliefs. And there isn't. It's not a common set of beliefs. It ends up being a mode of expression. If we ever get a chance to like actually talk to each other, oh, I see Margie actually brought that up too. But if we get a chance to talk to each other, Astro Ranger, I think I could probably come up, I'm sure I could ask you enough questions that you would acknowledge that you could think of memories where you experienced gender dysphoria. And I think if you can remember your own gender dysphoria, I think I could explain what my experience was chronically. I think that every human ends up with at least acute bouts of gender dysphoria throughout life. And so anyway, if we ever get a chance to talk to each other, I would absolutely bring that up. I've been talking for 2 hours straight. Sorry, folks. Let me see. So just to finish this a little bit up. So the quality or characteristic of being transgender, it's just being transgender, which I think is what Margie was trying to say. I would rather just say being transgender. I have occasionally used the word transgender in my own writing as a noun to talk about my gender, which is expressed in a way that doesn't conform to social norms. So anyway, I still agree. Yeah, there's not an ideological point to that. So let me see. Seeing genitalia at the market would be a bit bonobo. That's true. What do we got here? Astro Ranger, thank you for your respect. Definitely. So Jessa, I'm not sure if you're still here. Do you do debates? So let me see. Oops, sorry. If Christians actually took what the Old Testament said seriously, then they recognize that Jesus is by default a false prophet. That's fascinating. And so would ignore anything in the New Testament. Then they wouldn't be Christians now, would they? Having that come from Christos, the bringer of light, right? That would be sort of funky. I wonder what I said about being relatively confident. I have no idea. All right. So here's a great point. Yeah, see, right? I know many people who have struggled with I know many people who have struggled with fertility. Like I don't want to go down a whole lot of this road here. Sylvia Federici would have a just a field day on this. When we reduce, she's a feminist, by the way. When we reduce a person's identity to their fertility, they become machines. You know, what are these machines for? What are they part of? Are they part of, you know, she relates it ultimately to capitalism, for what it's worth. Which, you know, if you're not having fun with that, I guess I understand. But what are we machines for? Are we machines for society? Are we machines for a social organization? What is it all about? We don't want to reduce it to fertility because, you know, there are plenty of people born who are not going to be fertile. So, all right, here's one more thing. Yeah, Jesus is supposed to fulfill a bunch of Old Testament prophecies. Here's a little bit here. I didn't get into it earlier. In Jewish Kabbalah, so I should just start with the Old Testament to begin with. There are many, many words for God. And in fact, oh my gosh, I want to say like in Genesis alone, maybe it was the Pentateuch, maybe it was the first 5 books, but there were something like 200 different words that were used to describe the deity. And I'm going to say the deity, but first I'm going to cough. I'm going to say the deity because there's at least one word, Elohim, that has goddess in it, but then has a plural masculine ending. What does that mean? Does that refer to a strictly masculine god, as Christians put it, as modern translations put it? Anyway, many words. There is one word that is very important specifically to Western magical tradition, as it goes through Hermetic Kabbalah, which is not exactly Jewish Kabbalah, but we're throwing something else on top of it. And anyway, it's called the Tetragrammaton. This was a name for God that wasn't allowed to be spoken except by rabbis, by holy people, because it was a special name. And so it's, spelled in the English way, YHWH, which is Jehovah. The point here is that this tetragrammaton, this four-letter word, it represents a balance. It represents masculinity and femininity, and there's a gate in there. There's a type of gate in there that because you have he with the H's, so yod he, vow he. Yod and vow are masculine. The hes are feminine, and then you've got a he ending. What do they call that? Final. He final. Anyway, the point here is that this word has a lot of magical authority to it. In Jewish Kabbalah, and I swear I'm getting here. I swear I was going to get there. In Jewish Kabbalah, the big word is Yehovah. And then if it turns out that the process by which you begin to reunite with God introduces another letter in there. Each of these letters means something. It introduces the letter Shin. And you put that in between. Now you've got a way to mediate your this greater self and this more worldly self. If you thought about this in Western magical tradition, we're talking about the macrocosm and the microcosm. Hopefully everybody's still loving this. If you're not, I'll totally get it. But anyway, the point here is that if you introduce the Shin, you now have gone from Yehovah to Yeshua. And I'm sure there's nobody out there who's not going to see the similarity to Joshua, which ended up Romanized, I guess, to Jesus. So when you bring up OT prophecies, any prophecies, ultimately you had an allegory that says, each of us is a combination of macrocosmos and microcosmos, as Jehovah, as each of us as a manifestation of Jehovah, only end up being able to reunite our two selves by introducing Yeshua. So anyway, a lot of the Bible is really an allegory for things that come from far back. And this is why I was trying to say to Kaysen earlier that a lot of this was only intended to be allegorical, and this is partly why Jesus was believed to have said this is why you have strong meat for men, which is to say Kabbalah, and a difficult way of practicing reuniting with your God. And what he was bringing, which was, listen, I'm going to give you parables. Okay, don't be a dick. Here's my parable, don't be a dick. So, anyway, I went off on a whole lot of thing there with all this ton of stuff here, but because Astro Ranger, you're making such a good point. The concept of the Messiah, excuse me. Margie's no longer making sperm. Same, babe. So agreed. You have a whole ton of great stuff here. Thank you so much for bringing all this up, Astro Ranger. You think Andrew Wilson and I would have a good back and forth? He's Christian Orthodox, but argues his point from a secular view too. I can reach out to Andrew Wilson. I mean, I might be interested, and might be interesting. I'm going to tell you, I'm a scientist and a philosopher. I am nowhere near a Hebrew scholar, nowhere near a biblical scholar, but I have read a whole ton of Western magical tradition stuff, because this is just what I like to do. When I came here today, I expected to talk about gender transition, not the Bible. Nor would I have talked about Jewish Kabbalah. no idea that was going to bring that up. So Tyler, you're saying fascinating. Thanks for elaborating. There is a book that I believe, I've got to think about it. It's John Michael Greer, Circles of Wisdom, Paths of Wisdom. Paths of Wisdom. I decided I'd just look. So John Michael Greer is a really exceptional esoteric author. Probably not a lot of fun in person, but has studied stuff that is just like, why did you even find that interesting? Then he's like, well, because now I was able to write a book. He also wrote a really good book. I used to I still do. I love the Arthur myth, right? So this is from Welsh myth, right? The Arthur and Guinevere myth, and what are they called? The Knights Templar, right? Fit into that. Not really, but they do. Because I'm sure everybody here read that Dan Brown book, whatever it was, the Da Vinci Code. Anyway, they sort of fit into it. And John Michael Greer also has a really good book about the Knights Templar. That was another really good one that he did. Well, it was really about the Holy Grail, which was a pretty good one. I think that was a great book. So, okay, I'm getting ready to end because boy, my voice is going weird. Hey, Frybird. I do have this question, and I love this. How did I learn? So here's an interesting point. How did I learn my style of makeup and dress sense? The same way that I learned any masculine dress sense and maybe lack of makeup. And I think the way any cisgender girl does, and it's just trial and error. I've always, I like studying people. That's coming out kind of creepy, I know, but I like studying people. I like looking at people and going, why does that person look the way they look the way they look? I just think that's interesting. And so, when I was growing up, first of all, my sisters had girl magazines, right? So Cosmopolitan and Vogue, these were just the ones. Mademoiselle was the other one that I can think of. And so I would just read these because it was like, oh, look, I can learn about makeup through, through these magazines. Once I started really leaning into my gender during graduate school, I was super gothic, first of all, and so the makeup was sort of part of being gothic, right? It's part of what you were supposed to do. It's how you looked, creepy or whatever. And so I learned a ton about eyeliner then. So now when I transitioned, I thought, well, this will be easy. I'll just use all the things that I used when I was, 25. No, it didn't work. My body changed. Obviously. I mean, I put on weight, I got older. My face has changed over the course of 30 years, who would have thought? And so I had to relearn everything again. What I will say I did, I took a couple of lessons. There's a total of 2 lessons, I think, with an actual makeup artist. And that makeup artist was like, well, look, here are things you could do. Ultimately, what I do now, by the way, all I do is eye makeup. Like I have some color corrector, some concealer, eyeliner, so liquid eyeliner, and then false eyelashes. I love false eyelashes. Just love them so much. Anyway, point here is that talk to this makeup artist who said, well, based on your face shape and, coloring, the coloring that you have, because I tend to have fairly rosy cheeks to begin with. Who knew why? I don't know why. Genevieve noticed that, I think, this past Tuesday. Anyway, so I did talk to a makeup artist who gave me some direction. I have, the standard Bobby Brown book from whenever. The Kevin Aucoin. Excuse me, boy. Let me cough again. Hang on. I keep trying not to. So I have makeup books, and then ultimately what I had to do was just play around. And I don't think that's any different from any one of us. You know, the makeup artist was like, oh, here are things you could do. I got a photo shoot done earlier this year, and so like had an actual makeup artist work on my face, and she told me certain things. And so it's, you know, I still think at the end of it, I had to figure out what I wanted to do. Because when I worked with this first makeup artist, he was like, oh, we'll do this and we'll use some contour, we'll use some blush, we'll use different eyeliner, we'll do your eyebrows, we'll do it. And it was like an hour worth of makeup. And I'm like, it's just not me. Because ultimately I ended up going, well, it looks like me with makeup. And I don't want to look that much made up. That's just that's my style. So, Angela, fabulous question. Dress sense is the same thing. I think basically, and it's changed over the course of 3 years, right? I mean, I wanted to wear very voluminous things when I was just starting out. And then, you know, now I wear different things, you know, that show off a different sort of figure that's occurred over 3 years. So, Thomas Merton. I've seen Thomas Merton. We'll have to talk about him. Here we go. So just to finish that up, I learned my makeup. Angela says I learned my makeup by going, ooh, I don't know what this is. This is a shop in the UK, I assume. Selfregies. I don't know. Getting them to do my makeup. And yeah, see that, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. And then I think you still end up having to go, yeah, I like this, I don't like that. So, because like anytime I put on blush, oof, I'm like, I look like I look like a drag queen. To answer your question, my PhD is in analytical chemistry. In particular, I worked on semiconductor surfaces. Ultimately, semiconductor surface physics. Good times. Did me very, very little good in industry, but it did open a whole ton of doors. I like this too. Oh, Selfridges. Okay. I was given makeup lessons, so here we go. Makeup lessons by your MB partner, cis femme friend. I just gave myself a chill. I touched my ear, and then I was like, whoop. I still don't know what Selfridges is, for what it's worth, but I assume that's a shop. Here we go. Yeah. I've changed my dress style many times. Yeah. Here's the thing, too. Well, because I'll put it to you this way, too. When I was going out in my 20s, I was significantly sluttier. I'll just say that. I may have had a few years in there where I was a bit promiscuous. I don't know if anybody looking at me now is like, oh, I'm scandalized. Maybe you're all going, well, of course you did. Jeez, what the... So when I was, so 30 years ago, I loved wearing really tight skirts, I loved tight mini skirts. I loved garter belts. I loved those. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend so much effort just getting dressed. I do have a corset that I really love. But for the most part, it's like, listen, I'm just going to get some sort of a, regular sort of, top. I'm going to wear a regular sort of skirt. I don't know. Part of me goes, I really want to go all out. And then other times I just go, yeah, I'm 55, I don't think, there are times when I saw some girl who was like in her 20s, early 20s, and I said, oh my gosh, you look so amazing. And she goes, well, I got it at the shop right there. Like, go in there. It was Forever 21 for what it's worth, if anybody knows that. And I was like, no, they're going to toss me out. And she's like, no, it's true. That's not true. You can wear whatever you want, girl. You go. And I was like, but if I do that, I'm going to feel foolish. There's only so much that I can do. So, Astro Ranger, I'm glad you love chemistry. I did teach at a university. I've taught at a couple of universities. So I have maybe 3 or 4 years worth of university experience across the two. Now it's all right. Oh, get out of town. You've been reading Pi Cal and Ti Cal. I don't know if it's funny or not that I totally know what you're talking about. I wish I could remember what the P and the H is, but I have known and loved. These were drug type things. Pi-Cal is about it's ecstasy, and I'm trying to remember what that particular molecule is, and I forgot. I do appreciate this. Look at this. I'm here to offer you slut congratulations. I really leaned into it. I enjoyed it a lot. I had a good time dressing, when I was younger. So it was kind of fun. But so my wife originally had Pi-Cal. I don't know if she ever had Ti-Cal by Alexander Shulgin, by the way. So there you go. Oh, I should probably mention my wife is an organic chemist. So we met when I was teaching at a university. She was not my. I've always said this. She was not my student, just so you know. But we did meet. She was a graduate student. I was teaching there, and I guess the rest is history. It turns out we had really good chemistry. Maybe on that note I should end. I don't know. So, anyway, somebody's signing about. Oh, phenylethamine. Okay, phenethylamine. Okay. Yeah, I may or may not have been involved in some syntheses when I was young and impressionable. And by tryptamines, okay. And by may or may not, I mean almost certainly, yeah. So, forever, forever 21. There are things I'll go in there and I'll be like, oh, that is so cute. And then I'm like, let me see, what do we have here? Okay, so we have size 2, size 3, size 4. And I'm like, the size 2 started off fine, but I do have to stick a 0 at the end of that. So, okay. I'm not even all that big. That's the crazy thing, too. I'm like 5'9", and I mean, the rest of me is pleasingly plump. I'm pleased by my plumpness. So, I'll run with that. That was one of the craziest things. Apropos of nothing and coming from nothing else. When I first started taking estrogen, so I've always, thank you, Frybird. I've mentioned in several places and ways, it's possible that I have, I think probable, that I have a partial androgen insensitivity syndrome. This is based on how quickly I took to estrogen. I've had conversations with people and they go, it's most likely. I haven't gone and done hardcore genetic research because really who the hell cares at this point? But I did start growing boobs really fast. Hi, Jade. Good to see you. I started growing boobs really fast, and my butt, that has always been kind of curvy, just ballooned. I don't know if I want to say ballooned, but I do have quite the butt now. And it's a good thing that I appreciate curvy women, because otherwise I would be looking at myself going, damn, you need to go on a diet. But instead I look at myself and sometimes I go, damn, you got a lot of butt. So, and I don't mind it. It's badonk. It is not for scandal. What did you say, Margie? So Margie says she has trouble finding clothes even at the start of this year. That's fascinating. When did you, Margie? I forget, because you started doing this new protocol that you ended up developing partly on your own. When did you start that one? It's been no more than a year or two, right? So, but yes, agreed. It's not easy to find larger sizes. This is partly why when I find a skirt that fits me, I'm wearing it forever, because I have junketh in the trunketh, as Frybird puts it. You should have been here for the biblical conversation earlier. They might have appreciated that. Maybe not. Because I think they were being serious. I think they were like, no, the Bible's totally true. So Genevieve wearing a 22. See, I don't feel too bad. I don't feel too bad. So anyway, so it's February. Oh, just wait, this recent October? Or October 24? How long have we known each other? It's got to have been at least a year I've known you now, Margie. Um, I am so serious that your junketh pleaseth me. That's great. My size is baby elephant. So yeah, Tyler, yeah, starting hormones, I think is one of the most beautiful thing that I ever did, for what it's worth. I don't think I don't think my boobs have doubled since February. They've definitely gotten bigger. I'm supposed to see my gender clinic, so I'm supposed to see my nurse. I don't know, about 10 days in the next couple of years, next couple of weeks. Last time I talked to her, I would have been 2.5 years on hormones. So she said, "Oh yeah, next time we talk, we're gonna start considering, should we or can we, start ramping that down." And one of the things that I believe she told me about is that if I still feel like my boobs are growing, which I can still feel, whatever they're called, breast buds. I can still. Sorry if you weren't. I don't know if I should do this on, do this on camera, but maybe some of you like that. I don't know. But I can still feel breast buds like going there. So I've got to, I'm going to go in there and say, "Hey, listen, I got more time on my chest, I guess." So medication antagonizing E and P stopped your breast growth and is tracked for a year. Ooh, that's a bummer. I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to ask you why. Should I read the Doors of Perception? What do you bring with it? Tell us on cam. I am loving this. Now I'm cracking up. The clock is telling me to simmer down now. I can't get too bummed when somebody's like, "Hey, you look all right." This is why when I saw that one thing that says equals boner, I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to run with it." What did Brenda say? It was euphoria. So all of you are killing me. Thank you. I mean, you're making me blush in a good way is what I meant. So, all right, wait a minute. It's been 2.5 hours. I didn't expect to go up this long. I also kind of expected to take a break, which usually I'll take a break and then I'll go on. What do we call this thing? Was this just do we call it my fetish thing? Well, I can't remember what we called this. Anyway, usually I would use this. After, talking for a while, I get a little bit tired. The voice gets a little tired. Anyway, no breaks till Brooklyn. God, my kid loves that song. He's always bringing up No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I don't know why. They too, and I also screwed up. I just misgendered my own kid. I can't believe that you actually produced Milk, Angela. I think that's great. I love that. Anyway, I'm going to end. Frybird, I'm so glad that you were here. Obviously, Matt, thank you so much, and Margie, thank you for everybody for moderating and stuff. I did like Kaysen. I did like Sancordia. I forget. Sancordia. Oh, sorry. What did you? So Astro Ranger, what did you like about all the Aldous Doors of Perception? Why? I apologize for my extended leave of missing you. It's okay. I'm telling you. Anyway, I do love thank you so much, everybody. Astro Ranger, if you want to tell me about Doors of Perception as a comment or something, thank you so much. I have had a phenomenal time. I had no idea. I wanted to have fun. Like I said, it's been kind of serious. So this certainly did it. It perked me up. And thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. I give you the heart like I do. Some kisses, love and kisses. And I will see you, Tuesday. Not very long. Hey, Shakespeare. Meow. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just now leaving too. So, all right. Thank you all. And I will see you on Tuesday. Love you all. Bye.